Hi everybody, I'm Stacy. I'm a registered nurse. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome in. If you're coming back, I'm so glad to have you. Let's talk about hospice eligibility. I've talked about it before, but let's talk about it again. What makes our patients, our family members eligible for hospice, and when should we bring hospice on board? Let's talk about it. And if you like what you see here, then I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. When do we know that we should be referring our patients to hospice? When should we be considering hospice for our loved ones, our families? A lot of times people will come on hospice at the very end of their life. And hospice offers a lot of different supportive things for families and for patients. We have volunteers. Some hospices have music therapy. We have CNAs to help with bathing and light chores. We have nursing that comes to the home, generally 1 to 2 times a week, but increasing as a patient need increases and as needed, with instant communication with a doctor. So the patient is not having to go out to the doctor. Unfortunately, if a patient comes on service at the end, they're not getting the full benefit that they could be getting from hospice. What makes a person eligible? If you have a disease, a life-limiting disease, and the prognosis is 6 months or less, if the disease would run its natural course, then you may be eligible for hospice. Now, does that mean you're going to die in 6 months? Does that mean you're going to die tomorrow? No. It doesn't always mean that you're going to go in the projected amount of time that your disease process what would be expected with your disease process. Everybody's disease process is different. There's so many different things that can qualify you for hospice. The main thing is, if you have a life-limiting illness, that if the disease would run its natural course, you would have 6 months or less to live. That is a hard thing to swallow for families. It's a hard thing. But this is where doctors and practitioners that are not in hospice should begin communicating those things as they see that patients are not getting results from aggressive treatments, that they are not a candidate for those aggressive treatments. Sometimes a person will continue to get aggressive treatments beyond the point of when they should have stopped seeking aggressive treatment. And sometimes those aggressive treatments can be more harmful than helpful. I know from a personal standpoint, my grandmother had cancer and she was on chemotherapy. She had a colon cancer that metastasized to her liver, and she had a spot on her liver. Eventually it metastasized to the brain. The chemotherapy was really hard on her, and she was already a very small woman, and it really depleted her bones, and it really depleted her energy, and it really took a lot of quality that she could have had in her end of life, because the cancer that she had wasn't going to be cured by the chemotherapy. The chemotherapy was not curative. It was just managing the cancer. It was not going to get rid of it. We knew this. She knew this. It caused memory loss. And eventually she fell and fractured her hip. And from then on, it was just downhill. Now, we knew my grandmother had cancer. We knew that she was at end of life. But I feel that she may not have broken her hip. She may not have fractured her bones. She had several fractures at the end, and mostly because the chemo really depleted the calcium, the minerals in her bones, and she was fragile. We did get hospice for my grandmother. Hospice was on board for my grandmother, and I'm very thankful that she had hospice and that she had that kind of attention at the end of her life, and that she had a beautiful, peaceful death. My grandmother did die in a facility. She was not able to be at home, unfortunately, and sometimes that's the case. The thing about hospice is the goal is to allow the patient to have a comfortable, peaceful death, and the goal would be to have them die at home if that's what they wished, to be able to help them facilitate their dying process in the home. What hospice is nurses, doctors, CNAs, volunteers, chaplains, social workers. What it is people who will come in and allow a person to remain in their home and be comfortable and manage their symptoms. What it is not, we don't euthanize people in hospice. I think that is a big misconception. I've heard it said many times that hospice just comes in and gives morphine and kills people. That's not our goal. Our goal isn't to give morphine and kill people. Our goal isn't to drug people up and make them unaware of their surroundings. Our goal is not to take away the quality that they have at the end of their life. Our goal is to give them the most comfort possible and meet them where they're at. Some patients want to be comfortable. Some patients want to sleep. They don't want to have pain, and they want you to give them the medication and manage their pain so that they have no pain. And when you're dying, sometimes you are going to sleep more, and it isn't always the medication. It isn't always the medication that's causing the sleeping and the drowsiness. Sometimes it's the disease and dying process. A lot of times that's what it is. I've seen people on massive doses of morphine be wide awake. I've seen people that take a tiny little dose and they're just knocked out cold for days. So I really don't think it's always correlated with the morphine. So what kinds of disease processes do we see on hospice a lot? Well, cancer is a for sure thing. If a person has cancer and they're not seeking aggressive treatment, we know that if their disease runs its natural course, they would have 6 months or less. Have I seen people live longer? Absolutely. I've seen people on hospice 1 or 2 or 3 years even, depending on how their body is responding to their disease process. Some people live a long time with a terminal disease process. One of the slower disease processes that we see on hospice are your memory loss things like Alzheimer's disease. We have one called senile degeneration of the brain, which is a blanketed diagnosis for a memory loss that's not Alzheimer's. Many things can cause senile degeneration of the brain. Many things can cause memory loss. There's many disease processes that can affect your brain's ability to function. Cardiac disease can affect your body's ability to have a functioning brain, and having a stroke can damage the brain and make a person not be able to function at their baseline. It can cause types of dementias. Dementia is a symptom of other diseases, but basically there's so many different ones. The thing is that each one has a different trajectory, and so that's looked at individually. COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is a common one that we see in hospice. End-stage heart disease, heart failure, those are common things that we see. There are neurodegenerative disorders, ALS, things like that, that we see in hospice. And truly, it is beneficial to have a nurse coming to the home, monitoring the vital signs, managing symptoms, communicating with the doctor, collaborating with a team, and allowing that patient to maintain to be able to stay at home. So one of the things that we ask patients when they come on service is, why hospice? Why now? And the reason that we ask that is because we want to know what brought you to hospice and why are you coming to hospice now? It's just that simple. Some people get referred to hospice and they are appropriate, but they're not really hospice minded or hospice ready. And it's important to know that, to prevent hospitalizations, discharges, revocations. These things happen if you bring someone on service and they're not hospice minded. We of course want to serve as many people as we can serve on hospice. We want to help as many people as we can, and if we can help them, we want to help them. That is our goal in hospice, is to help as many people as we can. However, sometimes a doctor will believe that a person is hospice appropriate, or there have been times that a doctor will simply refer someone to hospice because they're not compliant with the treatment anymore. They're non-compliant, and the doctor will say, well, then there's nothing else I can do for you. You're going to die. Well, let me tell you, just because you're 100 years old does not make you appropriate for hospice. You have to meet certain criteria to be on hospice. You need to have a decline in function, weight loss, falls, infections. Again, cancer is one of those things that just is kind of like, depending on the type of cancer, because obviously skin cancer is a little bit benign, but cancer is one of those things that's definitely got a different trajectory. But some disease processes are slower and they take a longer time to kill you, essentially. I mean, some of us have heart disease and it goes on for years until we get to the final stages of heart disease. What we're looking at when we're bringing someone on hospice is, have they had a decline in 2 or more of their ADLs? What are ADLs? Activities of daily living. Have they lost the ability to walk recently? Were they walking and now they're in a wheelchair? Have they lost the ability to tolerate activities? Were they able to, say, walk from the bedroom to the bathroom, but now they're so short of breath that they have to stop 3 times before they can get to the toilet from their bed, which may be only 25 feet, which may be less than 10 feet. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. Ambulation, toileting. Have they lost their ability to hold their bowel and bladder? Are they having accidents? Are they incontinent? Those are things that we're looking at. Do they need assistance with housekeeping, cooking, meal preparation? Do they need to be fed? Do they need to be changed? Are they able to toilet themselves? Do they still understand the mechanics of toileting? These are all things that we're looking at when we're talking about hospice eligibility. We want to know, is there weight loss? Maybe you don't stand on a scale, but we know in a home setting, we know if we had to tighten up the belt buckle or we had to change the size of clothes that we bought. We can see things like bones, bone prominence, the skin is fragile. We can see when the bones in the rib cage in the back are protruding. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at, whether there's muscle wasting. That is all things that make a person eligible for hospice, and those are the types of things that we are talking about when we're looking at criteria for admitting to hospice and eligibility. Of course, the disease process and a decline in function and cognition and those sorts of things. Were they able to communicate and now they're only speaking one word? Or were they able to sit upright and now they're leaning over to the side? That happens in some of your memory loss diseases. They begin to lose that ability to hold their head up, that ability to understand the mechanics of toileting, that ability to understand how to put their clothes on. These are all things that are showing us that a person's body and function is declining. What are they capable of? What have they lost the ability to do? And if you're looking in terms of time, you may say to somebody, what was Grandma able to do last Christmas that she couldn't do this Christmas? What was Grandma able to do at Easter that she couldn't do at Thanksgiving? Did you notice any differences? Has Grandma, has Grandpa, has Mom, Dad had any falls? Did they have any fractures? Have they been to the hospital a lot lately? How many times have they been to the hospital in the past 90 days, in the past 6 months? These are all things that we would be curious about, and we want to know, why are you coming to us? Do you want to stop seeking aggressive treatment? Are you looking for pain management? What is your goal in coming to hospice, and what brings you to this point today? That's the kind of questions that we're going to ask in hospice when we're coming to do an evaluation and see if a person is eligible. It's better if a doctor starts noticing those declines early on, where we are in the home and we are seeing that decline and we are able to get a handle on a patient's desires for end of life, make sure that they have a DNR in place, that they have power of attorney in place, make sure that their funeral arrangements are set. Those are the kinds of things when you bring hospice on board early enough, they have time to make sure that that death is peaceful and that it is hopefully how a patient would like their death to be. I've had so many patients tell me, I don't want to be in pain. I'm just scared to die because I don't want to be in pain. And that is something that really hits hard because I don't want to be in pain either. You know, I understand that desire to not be in pain. And I think that when we're looking at our loved ones, it's hard to be objective, and it's good to bring other people in that can advocate for your loved one to you or advocate for your patients. I love continuity of care. I love when somebody follows somebody into a hospice, for example. And I think it's important sometimes that hospice is advocating to the primary physician. Sometimes patients are not quite ready. They're not quite ready to stop aggressive treatment. And like I said, it's really important that education is happening throughout their illness, throughout their disease processes, about realistic prognosis, about what that time frame could look like. Now, let's be real, we can't predict a person's death down to the minute, generally speaking. When you do hospice long enough, you get a general idea of when a person is transitioning into active phases of dying, where they are not eating for several days in a row, they are no longer getting out of bed, they're sleeping all the time or the majority of the time, maybe only waking up for minutes, they're no longer taking in fluids. We understand that those things are telling us that the body is shutting down and it's coming to a close, and that people are getting to the end of their journey. And if we can prepare families for that before they get to that phase, it is frightening for families when they see mom and dad stop eating. The instinct is to want to push that food, to push that fluid, and the body is designed to stop needing those things. So if you get hospice on board when a person is showing eligibility, the earlier, not too early. You don't want to bring somebody on where they're not at that place in their disease process, right? But you do want to bring them on early enough that you are able to do interventions and education and prepare a family and a patient for how that dying process could look. If you're in a long-term care facility, you generally know when a patient is beginning to decline, they're not getting out of bed anymore. Maybe they used to walk to breakfast and now you have to push them in the wheelchair. Maybe they used to eat 100% of 3 meals. Now they're just eating 50% of 2 meals a day, and you see they're losing weight. You see that they're not bouncing back. And that is a good time to bring it up with the doctor. Hey, doc, what do we think about this patient's prognosis? Do we think hospice is a viable option? Because we're allowed to make those suggestions to the doctor, even if they say no. It's always good when you're a nurse to use those assessments that you're doing and bring them to your doctor. How many times have you dealt with hospice? Are you working in long-term care? Are you a hospice nurse? Do you have questions about eligibility? Have you seen people that you wish would have been on hospice sooner? And how did you approach a situation when a patient wasn't ready for hospice that they were totally appropriate? Have you had those situations? I would love to hear from you in the comments, and let's talk about it more. If you like what you see here, I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.